Greetings and welcome back to the lesson. We are going to answer question 4, December 2022. The subject is meetings, compliance and administration. Question 4a reads, explain two circumstances that may lead to members present at a general meeting to elect one of themselves to preside at the meeting. Question 4a. Two circumstances. Two circumstances that may lead to members present at a general meeting to elect one of themselves to preside over the meeting. To preside over the meeting. The first circumstance is absence of the chairperson. In the absence of, where the chairperson is not present, then obviously the members can elect one of themselves to preside over the meeting. If the chairperson of the meeting is absent or unable to preside over the meeting, he may be present or she may be present, but maybe not feeling well. So in such a case, the members may elect one of themselves to act as a temporary chairperson. And that ensures that the meeting can proceed and decisions can be made in the absence of the designated chairperson. 2, conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. In situations where the chairperson has a conflict of interest in a particular agenda or matter being discussed, then it may be deemed appropriate for the members to elect someone else to preside over that specific agenda item to ensure impartiality and fairness in decision-making process. So these are two circumstances that may lead to members present at a general meeting to elect one of themselves to preside over the meeting. One is in the absence of the chairperson, or if the chairperson is present but unable to preside over the meeting. Number 2, if there is any conflict of interest between the chairperson and any of the agenda items being discussed at the general meeting. 2 circumstances, 4 marks. Part B, you have been engaged as a company secretary for provision of consultancy services to a members association where delegates represent members in the annual general meeting of the association. Describe 4 provisions you would include in the constitution of the association to ensure that the members are protected from the arbitrary powers of the board of directors. 8 marks. Provisions that you would include in the constitution of the association to ensure members are protected from arbitrary powers of the board of directors. We read that you have been engaged as a company secretary for the provision of consultancy services to a members association where delegates represent members in the annual general meeting of the association. So, what are the provisions that would include in the constitution of the association to ensure that members are protected from arbitrary powers of the board of directors? Clear roles and responsibilities. That is one provision. There ought to be clear roles and responsibilities. Define the roles and responsibilities of the board of directors and clearly outline their limitations and accountability to the members. And that ensures that the board operates within its mandate and does not exceed its authority or power. Clear roles and responsibilities. You can also have provision on term limits. Term what? Limits. There could also be rotation. Term limit and rotation. Introduce term limits for directors to prevent concentration of power and promote regular rotation of board members. Why? Because that prevents the board from becoming entrenched. It also allows for fresh perspectives and diversity in governance. 3, member representation. Member representation. Include provisions for adequate representation of members on the board. And that can be achieved through the election of members as directors, or the establishment of what we call members' council that provides oversight and input into the board's decisions. Member representation. 4, transparency and accountability. Transparency and accountability. Establish mechanisms for transparency and accountability, such as regular reporting to members, financial audits, as well as disclosure of conflicts of interest. Why? Because that ensures that members have access to relevant information and can hold the board accountable for their actions. So those are some of the ways or provisions that you would include in the constitution of the association to ensure members are protected from arbitrary powers of the board of directors. 1, clear roles and responsibilities. 2, term limits and rotation. 3, member representation. 4, transparency and accountability. This would earn 8 marks. And the last part of this question says, appraise 8 steps necessary to develop a strong compliance strategy in an organization. 8 steps to develop strong compliance strategy. 8 steps to develop a strong compliance strategy. Now, the first step in developing a compliance strategy is to identify applicable laws and regulations. Identify applicable laws and regulations, because we are talking of compliance. This is a strategy to ensure that the organization complies with the laws and regulations. So in developing a compliance strategy, it's important first of all to identify what are these laws, what are the regulations that the company is expected to obey. So first of all, identify and understand the specific laws, regulations, industry standards that apply to the organization's operations. Why? Because that forms the basis of the compliance strategy. It forms the foundation of the compliance strategy. Then you can carry out number 2, risk assessment. Assess the risks. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, and the purpose for doing that is to identify potential compliance risks and prioritize them based on the potential impact. Why? Because that helps in focusing resources and efforts on areas of highest risks. These are compliance risks. Do you understand? Then 3, develop policies and procedures. Develop policies and procedures. Develop robust policies and procedures that clearly define expected behaviors, that clearly define expected guidelines, and also controls to mitigate compliance risks. Such policies should align with legal requirements and industry best practices. That is step number 3. 4, training and awareness. Training and awareness. Implement a training program to ensure that employees are aware of their compliance obligations and that they understand the organization's policies and procedures that have been developed in step number 3 and the general procedures of the company. And training should be ongoing. It should not be a one-off event. No, training should be ongoing to keep employees updated on regulatory changes. 5, internal controls. Internal controls. Establish strong internal controls. Establish monitoring systems in order to detect and prevent compliance breaches. And that includes regular audits. That may include internal reviews and also implementation of checks and balances. Internal controls. Then 6, reporting mechanisms. Reporting mechanisms. Implement effective reporting mechanisms such as anonymous hotlines, whistleblower channels that will encourage employees to report potential compliance violations or even concerns without fear of retaliation. 7, compliance testing and monitoring. Compliance testing and monitoring. Regularly, the organization should monitor and test, monitor and test, test and monitor, monitor and test, monitor and test compliance controls to ensure their effectiveness. And that may involve internal audits, that may involve self-assessments, that may involve independent reviews in order to identify areas for improvement and address any compliance gaps. Improvement. Continuous improvement. Foster a culture of continuous improvement by regularly reviewing and updating the compliance strategy. Regularly review. Look at the various stages. Review if it's developing policies, come up with better policies. If it is changing the training programs, depending on the changes in the environment, review the training programs, initiate new internal controls, Reporting mechanisms, come up with better ways of reporting, timely reporting. So review the strategy, compliance strategy, continuous improvement. All right? Why? In order to adapt to changing regulations, in order to adapt to emerging risks. And that may include staying informed about new developments in compliance landscape. It may include incorporating best practices. So candidates, by following these steps, organizations can develop a strong compliance strategy that mitigates risks, ensures legal and ethical conduct, and protects the organization's reputation. These are 8 steps. 1, identify applicable laws and regulations. 2, carry out risk assessment. 3, develop policies and procedures. 4, train employees and create awareness. 5, initiate, establish internal controls. Put in place proper reporting mechanisms. Test and monitor compliance. Then there ought to be continuous improvement. 8 steps, 8 marks. 8 steps, 8 marks. We've answered question 4 in our today's lesson. In our next lesson, we are going to answer question number 5. Bye-bye.